You have 3 voicemails.
In podcast, everyone is freely and able to share anything.
Probably except politics, because we don't want to go to prison.
If we were a sports clothing company, right, we would be Puma, right?
No, we'll be Nike. What is wrong with you?
We're doing the podcast about Vietnam, but we're talking in English. That's very weird.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it?
Hello there.
Welcome to the show where we have the convos about Vietnam, you know.
Hello there. Welcome to Convo Comrades, a conversation with the community about Vietnam.
In this show, you will hear our honest and unfiltered thoughts on selected trends and topics all around Vietnam. Yeah.
Well, welcome to episode 0. We're super excited. Why don't we start with introducing ourselves?
I think that's a good idea, you know.
Why don't you go first?
Okay, yeah, let me go first. My name is Long. I've lived and worked in the UK for the past, I think more than 10 years now. At heart, I'm somewhat of an entertainer. You know, I've always had a thing for making people laugh. You know, seeing someone laugh is very rewarding for me. And through this lockdown, I find my new passion of music making. You know, the type of music that you feel good when you listen to. So that's me. I'm an entertainer. Over to you, Hill.
Cool, thank you. Cool, thank you very much, Long. So my name is Hill, also known as Hill CK Ray online. I do a professional services job, but in terms of my passion and my hobby, I've been making digital content for a good 10 years now. I started on YouTube way back with dance covers and dance choreographies, but now I branched into travel filmmaking and cinematic travel content.
Okay, and with this being our first ever episode, I think let's introduce more about our show.
Exactly. What's the motivation behind Convo Comrades? You know, why are we starting this podcast? What do you think?
Firstly, I wanted to try something new. You know,
I'm so sorry, but normally your voice is not that deep. What's wrong?
No, my voice is always this deep.
That deep and manly.
Yes.
It seems like you're reading from a script or something.
No, I'm not a script reader.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Continue.
All right. So firstly, I always wanted to try something new, right? Because trying something new forces you to learn and develop yourself. A podcast, we have never done a podcast before, right? I'm very passionate about audio, like music. Podcast is a form of audio, and I really want to, you know, find out how it works, how to edit, how to make it. I'm also excited for all the guests that's gonna come to our show because they are gonna be amazing people. And I can't wait to learn from them and to share their knowledge on to our listeners, to the community, right? To the Convo Comrades community. That's the main motivation for me.
That's great to hear. And I think personally for me, so like I mentioned, I've been creating content for quite some time. And the type of content that I do create is curated. So I spend quite a lot of time in terms of editing and making it look good, right? Be it visual, cinematic vlogs, or if you were to go on my Instagram, I spend a lot of time on my posts, you know, making sure that it looks neat and tidy and curated. So for me, podcast is kind of like the flip side to it. Making a podcast is very casual, conversational, and we want to keep it that way. And making this sort of content, you know, it's less edited, is much more sort of laid back, conversational, and raw and unfiltered.
Yeah.
Actually, another point that I want to make is I think it's the trend towards long-form audio content at the moment, right? Because of the rise of the middle class, people are leading busier lives. That's just the truth. That's the matter of it. But now imagine like you're hoovering, right? You're hoovering your house, you're washing the dishes, you're doing your laundry, you're, you know, sitting in a Grab. Like what sort of content you consume at that point in time? Some people listen to music, some people do try to look at their phone, but it's very difficult to do so, right? When you're multitasking. And that's why, especially in the US, podcast has been a very strong trend over the past couple of years. And this is a very nascent market in Vietnam. It's very new in Vietnam. And I think slowly people will realize that, okay, they actually just want to put some earphones on and listen to something, whether it's an ebook, right? Or whether it's a podcast like us, and you just want to listen to a couple of people talk about various different topics that you're interested in. And that's the sort of reason why we're experimenting and we're venturing into this new space.
Yeah. And another point I wanted to add is sharing of opinion as well. So there'll be certain topics or events that we feel very strongly about, right? We have an opinion, we want to voice it out, right? And it may not be the right opinion, but only by sharing it and openly discussing it in a constructive manner can we then gather more information and then adjust our own opinion if necessary, right? Because that's the process of learning. You think something is right, but then you thought, oh, wait a minute, that's not right because I heard some new information from Hill. And then I thought, yeah, I was wrong. So I wanted it to be a safe haven. Everyone is freely and able to share anything.
Probably except politics.
Yeah.
Because, we don't want to go to prison. What's the safe word when we're touching on a sensitive topic and we shouldn't go down that route? Backtrack. All right. That's the safe word. From now on, when we touch on a topic that is probably not the right route to go down, let's say backtrack, and then we move on to a different one.
Cool. So while you were saying that, I thought it's better to lay down some groundworks now, set some boundaries, right, with all the topics that we're going to cover. So we're definitely going to cover everything related about Vietnam, except politics. But I think inevitably there'll be some times that we are forced to talk a little bit about politics, right? Is that allowed? That should be allowed, right?
I think that's allowed, yeah. Depends on your risk appetite, but yeah.
Depends on whether we want to go back to Vietnam. Yeah.
Okay, backtrack. Let's move on.
All right. Okay. So the next area that I want to touch on is dig deep into Convo Comrades, right? Because we were saying everything about Vietnam. So the suitable question here is why Vietnam, right? Why are we choosing to talk about problems or issues or trends in Vietnam? And the reason why, for me, is relatability. Okay. We are all Vietnamese here. I think I'm more Vietnamese than you, given my time spent in Vietnam.
Thank you very much.
So we all relate and we all have a sense of we love our country vibe. Right? We love our country. There'll be certain problems or trends that we really want to talk about. We really want to learn more and we really want to share to everyone. So that's my main motivation for choosing Vietnam.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think personally for me, because I spent most of my adult life overseas, so I went to Singapore, I went to the UK for quite a long time as well. And I've been making vlogs and they've always been in Vietnamese. And it's kind of like a way for me to stay connected with the Vietnamese community back home, right? And so I think it's just natural for me to sort of go down a route of making a type of podcast and the type of content with you around the country, because those are the sort of problems and issues, but also interesting topics and interesting learning points that we want to discuss about Vietnam.
Exactly. And then the next question is, we're doing the podcast about Vietnam, but we're talking in English. That's very weird.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it?
For me, it must be the comfort. I've always felt more comfortable speaking more openly in English. I think there's also a cultural thing to it. Because in Vietnamese, if you're older, I call you big brother. And ultimately, when I call you big brother, there's a sense of respect, right? And whatever you say has to be correct because you're older, you're more experienced, right? And I think definitely we should talk about this in one of the future episodes. Is it age discrimination? Yeah.
Or probably age hierarchy or something.
That's right. But in English, everyone is the same. It's just me, you, and we're more open to share our own knowledge and perspectives. And I think that's good for constructive building of our opinion.
Exactly. I think there's that greater individualism when it comes to speaking English compared to when you speak in Vietnamese. There's more of a, well, it doesn't really matter how old you are. It depends on your perspective and how mature your perspective is, and whether you can pitch your perspective and your views and your arguments against the other person, and therefore come to a sort of conclusion. That's the rationale behind why we're choosing English over Vietnamese. I think personally for me, like I mentioned before, I spend most of my adult life overseas, and that's when I really mature in my thinking. So therefore, a lot of the way that I think and the way that I form opinions, it's really in an English speaking environment. And that's why it's just easier for me to use English to convey my ideas and thoughts. For example, if you were to take, like, I don't know, a topic on business or something, in order to have casual surface level conversation with you about business, I can do it in Vietnamese. But in order to go really deep into it and go into the nitty gritty details and the depths of business, I think it's much easier for me to use English in order to convey my ideas.
Yeah, because all of our working life has been in English, right? My first job has been in English. Your first job is in the UK, right? Your first ever full-time job.
Yep.
Yeah, so we're definitely more comfortable speaking business terms in English. So I think let's move on to the next area here of who is this podcast for? Who should listen to our podcast?
Well, I think there are probably two groups of people, aren't there? The first group is the group who can actually follow the conversation casually, and they want to hear and consume news and information and perspectives on Vietnam in English. So those groups of people would be probably students, will probably be expats, will probably be Vietnamese living overseas, even foreigners who are interested in visiting the country someday when this whole pandemic situation is over. So those probably be the first group of people. And then you've got the second group of people. I would probably imagine those are the people who want to improve on their English, the people who want to learn the language and just essentially just improve their listening skills and improve their vocabulary. Hopefully, the sort of English that we use is helpful for you in your test. But I think, you got to think even broader than that. It's not just the immediate test that you're preparing for, but in terms of your development and your understanding of the language as a whole.
Yeah, and your actual usage of the language, right? I used to prep for my IELTS exam studying 3 different centers, British Council, all those official high quality centers, as well as Vietnamese ones where we go tactical,
What do you mean tactical?
Like the teacher would just not care about how you would use English normally, but he would know all the sentence structure that would give you points.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah. So very tactical. Then he would say, okay, in the writing exam, if you write this, I guarantee you will have X amount of points.
Just super pragmatic, getting the sort of points and the score that you would need in the test.
Which I'd say is very effective. I got a very high score.
Yeah, it got you over to the UK.
But further than that, you learn English because you want to use it casually and normally, not in a test environment. So yeah, definitely. When I was studying for that, I listened a lot of BBC News, which is very boring. I had to try to stay awake at times. So
Okay.
with our podcast, hopefully, if you're learning English, you're gonna find it interesting as well. Cool. And so the next question is, what is Convo Comrades, right? And I think we touched on it a little bit at the intro, a conversation about everything Vietnam, except politics. But let's dig a little bit deeper. Our show is gonna be divided into 2 segments, right? So the first segment is a golden guest, and as you guessed it,
Oh, okay. Well prepared.
there's gonna be a guest, a golden guest on that segment. We'll try to get someone amazing on our show. And,
Don't hype it up because probably the first couple of people who are joining our shows are our friends.
who are amazing.
I would like to say they are amazing people as well. Yeah.
So we're gonna learn more about them. We're gonna learn their experience, right? And then we're gonna share that knowledge on and have a chat with them about certain trends and topics in Vietnam. Okay? And our second segment is topical 2.
Oh, do you want me to elaborate on it?
Yes, please.
Okay, so for topical 2, it's kind of like this, really. It's just the two of us talking about selected topics for that particular episode. So, for example, we might be talking, I don't know, I'm assuming here episode 1 is going to be talking about COVID-19 because it's hot and it's everywhere at the moment, right? So the two of us are just going to be sharing our perspectives on COVID-19 and the situation in various different countries, but of course, linking it back to Vietnam and Vietnam's response. So that's an example of topical 2.
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, we have golden guest and topical 2. All right. I think a very important point that we should touch on is how can listeners listen to more of our good content? We are available on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, on all the major podcasting platforms. We're also available on YouTube, right? We're going to upload our audio files on YouTube.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so you can listen to us everywhere. It's just a matter of, do you want to listen to us?
Definitely, yeah. I think it just depends on your consumption habit and where you want to consume the podcast from, but we'll be in all the major platforms.
Great. And so how can our listeners leave feedback or send us messages or send us appreciation?
Okay, you're assuming that we're going to get appreciation there. So actually, this is a very interesting point. I think to me, Convo Comrades is about the community. It's not just us. It's not just the guests. It's about the community having a conversation about all the topics relating to Vietnam. Except politics. All right. And the way that you can be part of the community is to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, where we will be posting regularly to get your feedback, your suggestions, but also we're super keen to get your views and your counter arguments against ours, right? Because we don't, how do I put this? We're not in the position to say that we know everything. We're only giving you perspectives on certain topics. We're not the knowledge holders. We're not the specialists in those areas at all, right? We're here to provide a platform, but we're very welcoming when it comes to, receiving your views. And sometimes after a podcast, when we post it up, you might actually have a perspective and you might actually be able to provide certain evidence to counter argue and give us a completely different view compared to ours. And we're more than happy to read it out during the podcast in the next episode, right? Because it's all about the community and the various different views and perspectives around that particular topic.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole purpose of Convo Comrades. We put an idea, we put an opinion out there, and then we need to wait and we need to gather more information, more opinions from everyone, from the community, so that everyone has an informed decision and opinion.
Exactly. And I don't think, the way that you consume this podcast, we wouldn't want the community to passively consume it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be amazing if you can consume it, internalize it, but also form your own opinions afterwards. And if you want, then you can actively be part of the community and help voice those opinions out. And then, hopefully we can start a conversation. So once again, you can join the community on Facebook and Instagram at Convo Comrades. And actually on this note, why do we call it Convo Comrades, Long?
Interesting you ask, because there was a survey where we asked a bunch of people whether we should choose Convo Comrades or unfiltered coffee.
Exactly.
And the results were what is it? I don't have the exact numbers.
It was like 65% or something chose unfiltered coffee, and the remaining chose Convo Comrades, but we went with the minority. So the backstory to this was Long and I, in the preparation stages of Convo Comrades, what we did was we outlined the values that we wanted for this podcast. And the main value that we wanted was conversational, right? We want it to be very laid back, conversational, as though you were to meet us in a cafe one day, the both of us sitting down, and you were to join us in the conversation. This is exactly how we would sound. So that's why we came up with Convo Comrades with the alliteration on the C, Convo and Comrades. And then the alternative to that is unfiltered coffee, because in Vietnam, you've got filtered coffee, right? But this is unfiltered coffee. So the sort of coffee that you would have when you're having a casual conversation in that sense. When we conducted the survey on Instagram, the result were, predominantly for unfiltered coffee. I had to do a quick Google search on unfiltered coffee just to check before we land on the title of the show. Well, the first thing that pops up is it's going to bring you high blood cholesterol, which is not what we want, right? We do not want that at all. And if this podcast were to gain traction in the long term, I don't want people to think back to Unfiltered Coffee as, the name of the show that actually brings high blood cholesterol and eventual death to the people. So that's why I spoke with Long, and we decided, probably the best way to do this is to go down the route of Convo Comrades.
So to follow up on that point, actually, because you mentioned if this podcast was to gain traction going forward in the future, right? We have some questions sent in from a couple of people.
Okay, so we did not have any questions sent in from a couple of people whatsoever. So what we did was we asked 2 questions on Instagram in preparation for this podcast. The first question was, hey guys, if you have any questions relating to the podcast and the preparation of the podcast, please comment down below, and then we'll sort of try to resolve them in episode 0. And then in the second question we asked was, hey guys, if you have any suggestions on the topics that you want us to cover in the podcast, please comment down below as well. And we got 0% in terms of responses for the first question and 100% of responses in the second questions. So we can actually tell you some of the topics that we might be covering in the future episodes. But as for now, we have no one interested in how we prepared for the podcast whatsoever. So yeah, we ended up making up some questions.
It's not made up. It's sent in by...
It's definitely made up.
I have the email address here.
Yep. So it'd be good if you can actually read out the question and tell me who sent those in.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question was sent in by iamnotlong@yahoo.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the question reads, where do you see the podcast in 5 years? And that's a very interesting question. Let me have a go at this one. Okay.
I love it. You prepared the question, you prepared the answer. All right, go ahead.
What do you mean? I am not Long prepared the question, and Long is going to answer it.
Okay.
It's 2 different people. Okay, yeah. So in 5 years, let me close my eyes. 5 years, I see us, Convo Comrades, as the top player in podcast market in Vietnam. If we were a sports clothing company, right, we would be Puma, right?
No, we'll be Nike. What is wrong with you?
Because Puma,
we're not Puma, we're Nike, man. Come on.
People don't think about Puma until they see someone, like they know, like Rihanna, because Rihanna is the brand ambassador of Puma.
Or Nike, they think of Ronaldo. Because Rihanna doesn't play sports. Oh my God.
Okay, yeah, we're the top players of podcast. And then there'll be so many guests who came to our show and so many more guests who wants to be on our show. And we would have a substantial impact on the community by then. We would have changed people's opinions for the better. Mm-hmm. So that's my view on that. 5 years, look ahead.
Okay, so that's a very optimistic view. I think I should counteract that with a very pessimistic view, right? So I think this is probably the only episode that you're going to listen to. And what's going to happen is the podcast is going to die. No one's going to listen to it.
Yeah.
And in 5 years' time, Long and I are going to have kids. Not together. Well, actually, in a very pessimistic scenario,
nothing wrong with us having kids together.
Yeah. Nothing wrong. But there's everything wrong with me having kids with Long because I don't like that. So that's a very pessimistic view. And we're just gonna not have any impact on society and the world whatsoever.
Sad. Very sad.
All right, let's move on to something more interesting. Can you read the next question by I'm Not Long?
No, because I'm Not Long only sent one question.
Okay.
The next question is sent by...
Is it I'm Not Here?
How did you know? I mean, oh man. I'm Not Here must be a very popular person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the question reads, who is your ultimate guest on the show? Interesting question. I think I have mine.
You definitely had yours because you prepared for the answer.
I know, this is my first time seeing this question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, but let me think on the spot here.
You know, like one of the values that we have for this podcast is definitely not honesty.
Wait, let me think on the spot here. This is a new question for me.
Definitely not honesty.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Let me go first, okay? I'm very passionate about music, and my dream is to make V-pop the next K-pop. Right? K-pop is a global phenomenon. To bring V-pop to that level, it's just a dream for me.
Why actually? That's interesting. Why is that your dream?
First of all, I love my country. I want Vietnam to be known globally
Mm-hmm.
for all reasons, but for my passion, it's music. So I'd love everyone to know Vietnam for our music.
Mm-hmm.
Korea must be so proud right now because everyone knows K-pop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about my passion as well for music to make it big and global.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it'll be very beneficial to have some influential music producer on our show. And I think one of the most influential producer right now is Tuliver.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If Tuliver can be on our show, share his views on, his views and vision on V-pop, on the Vietnamese music industry, where it's heading. And also, he worked really hard because I think he studied classical music and then he turned away from that to
Okay.
to make modern music, to make hip hop, trap, all that kind of modern music. And he went underground first.
It'd be really funny if Tulliver comes onto the show, and I'm assuming he speaks fluent English here, and he says, "Oh, my vision is to make cool Vietnamese songs that's famous in the country only."
That's fine, that's fine because we're gonna change his opinion with new information.
Whoa, yeah, Convo Comrades. All right, cool.
Focus of our show, right? Okay, so that's my ultimate guest, Tuliver. How about yours?
All right, so if you were to start from your passion, then my passion is travel and making travel content. I'm super inspired by people who make travel content simply because, well, number one, the pandemic's definitely played a role in this. But yeah, I feel like life is too short to stay in one place. I think that the world is huge, right? And there are so many interesting and beautiful places around the globe that I think in a lifetime, you just can't really visit and you can't really go to and you can't really see. But I think the intention here is to make sure that you do that as much as possible before, essentially you're on your deathbed and, as morbid as it sounds, you don't regret that you've seen most corners of the world that you wanted to. So the number one content creator in this space to me is Sam Coder, and I'm super interested to get Sam Coder onto the podcast simply because he's visited amazing places all over the globe. He's been to the sand dunes of Saudi Arabia. He's swum to the depths of Mexico. He's climbed crazy volcanic mountains in Indonesia. He's been everywhere, right? And the sort of content that he makes really inspires you and makes you think, bloody hell, I want to go there. I want to be there, right? I want to witness that firsthand. And why I want him on this particular podcast is because I want to get his views on Vietnam's trajectory when it comes to travel and tourism, and the tourism industry as a whole of Southeast Asia and Vietnam specifically. He's been in so many countries. I'm sure he's probably been to either Vietnam or places similar to Vietnam, for example, Thailand, Indonesia. And he would have a view on, the future of content creation, but also specifically the future of content creation in the area of travel and tourism industry as a whole. It'd be great to get his views on that. I think it's going to be really valuable in that sense.
Yeah, I know Sam actually. I know Sam because I've seen his videos on YouTube. It's just mesmerizing, right? And I think I've been to a few places that he filmed. It's a talent that he makes something very normal and natural and elevated and make it look so cinematic. It's just insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. The way that he tells the story, it's actually very emotional. There's this video that he made about his brother who unfortunately passed away at a very young age. And, the main storyline here is it took death for him to realize the value and the meaning of life, and to really embrace life to the fullest, to experience life and to go to all of these places and really live life rather than, try to make a career and essentially make a living. Make a living and try to sort of sustain yourself. So it's a really powerful message in that sense.
I totally agree. I totally agree. You've got to live life doing what you love, right? Make it worthwhile because life is short.
That could be a topic.
So definitely, what can be a topic? Life is short.
Live life to the fullest.
Okay, yeah.
But depends on how you want to title it.
Life is short, but how short?
Long shot. Okay,
Anyway.
backtrack.
Backtrack. I think we've covered all the main points, all the basics of our podcast, and we've even touched on a few new and random questions sent in. So if you guys have any further questions, feel free to send us a message.
Do you want to let the guys know what sort of topics we'll be covering in the future episodes?
Definitely. We've got some crazy suggestions, and I'll be sharing a sneak peek of 3 topics, right? I think 3 is a good number.
So what's the first topic?
The first topic is living abroad and how people like expats or Vietnamese working abroad feel about coming back home. Is there a general fear or is there a general excitement?
Oh man, I've got so much to say about that. All right, cool.
Great. And the second topic is education. Overly stressed on education and grades, as well as a lack of education in some areas. For example, sex education. It's very frowned upon and something that we don't really talk about, right? So education.
Cool.
And lastly, we're going to touch on social taboos.
For example?
For example, a person's gender or real gender, they could be heterosexual or they could be homosexual. And I think
you're thinking very hard in terms of how you're going to phrase this, right?
it's a sensitive topic. I agree, and I think I want to break this. I want to break this mold in Vietnam. We should be able to openly talk about this and accept everyone for who they are. That's the general message, really. So that's the sneak peek of 3 topics that we're gonna cover.
Exactly. Brilliant. Any other points that we need to cover in this episode 0?
I don't think so. We've covered everything.
Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to episode 0. That's essentially how this podcast came about and our motivation behind it and all the preparation that we've done so far to get us to this stage. In episode 1, we'll be starting on the various different topics around the country, and future episodes we'll be bringing our guests in our Golden Guest segment. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Be part of the conversation. Join us on Facebook and Instagram at Convo Comrades. Feel free to suggest any topics and we'll go through and we'll choose them in future episodes. As for now, bye-bye.